Recording in progress.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Hola Eugenio. Hello Eugenio. Hello.
Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for us to do this presentation about Arabidopsis Thaliana. This project by Ilona Jurkonytė and Santiago Reyes. It was one of the two projects that won a competition that MAMBO, the Museum of Modern Art of Bogotá, launched during the pandemic. And it was a competition that it was focused on the relationship between landscape, territory, and pandemic, basically on the so-called phenomenon of the spillover, so the jump interspecies that is connected with the biggest diseases of our time, including the current COVID-19. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm the chief curator of MAMBO. My name is Eugenio Viola, for the people that don't know me. And Arabidopsis Thaliana won with another project by Jessica Mitrani among a competition of more than 90 proposals. Arabidopsis Thaliana is the Latin name of a specific model specimen in botany whose genome was fully referenced in 1982. It was basically the first plant that grown in outer space, inaugurating a new area of scientific exploration that is currently referred now as astropotany. It was the starting point for this complex project that intertwines different narratives, science fiction and rhetoric reminiscent of the Cold War. It's interesting for me to underline that when we bought this project, it was in the same period, basically, when Russia, Arabidopsis Thaliana was grown in outer space at that time by a group of Lithuanian scientists, at that time under Soviet rule. It was launched when Russia announced the first vaccine in the world, the notorious Sputnik, that again, it was referred to a narrative connected with the space. And this was the starting point for an audiovisual installation that offered in different moments, connecting also the inside and the outside of the institution.
Si se puede poner uno. No.
Was this project with four different elements. One is connecting the inside and outside of the museum, and inside the museum there is this complex video installation that draws inspiration from a Colombian radio program imagined in 1982 that is flirting with the colonial space exploration tropes. Once again, it was a way of facing the present with an approach that I like to call an archaeological approach to the present, as the Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben says. So, to re-evocate the present, the past, in order to question the present. In fact, by revisiting that specific moment in history and connecting it to the present, Arabidopsis Thaliana unfolds multiple narratives, warning how the science fiction sometimes can look more real than real. And now I will leave words to Santiago and Ilona. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugenio, for your kind presentation, and thank you all the people who is joining us now. The invitation title is Infusion. The idea is that everyone has infusion, either cold or warm. We wanted to invite the event through registration, so we can have so you're invited to open the cameras, and this is going to be a very open conversation. So what we're going to do is have a very brief presentation of with images. So for those who don't have the possibility to be here, have an idea of what's the installation, how it's installed in the museum. And then we're going to have open for a conversation, a dialogue. So we're going to start sharing. Ilona, if you want to complement something.
Thank you, Santiago, and thank you, Eugenio, for this brief overview. I feel like the presentation that we have prepared will complement, particularly with images, all that has already been said, and what is also important for us to, in a way, to attempt to recreate the experience of visiting the space. So we will try to, offer a pace and offer just a trajectory of a walk through the exhibition space, starting with the entrance and further going down into the exhibition space. Okay, so we have this very short presentation. We will just speak about the images. Please note all your questions and observations. We will be very happy to address them. So this is what you see. This is the Arabidopsis Thaliana plant. And in Lithuania, Arabidopsis Thaliana blooms from April till May. This is a small flowering plant native to Eurasia and Africa. In English, it is also known as a tail cress or mouse ear cress. Arabidopsis Thaliana is considered to be a weed, and it is found by roadsides and on disturbed land. At the same time, Arabidopsis Thaliana is a model plant used in botany experiments. It was the first plant to have the genome entirely sequenced. It is a popular tool for understanding the molecular biology of many plant traits, including flower development and light sensing. The image of Arabidopsis Thaliana growing in real time enters the exhibition at MAMBO through the antenna sculpture.
A satellite antenna as a found object reverses the sequence of image transmission by providing Arabidopsis Thaliana a surface to grow on. The plant is monitored by a surveillance camera 24/7. So at the entrance of the museum is this sculpture antenna that is, it has the real Arabidopsis growing. And it has been very interesting in this last 3 months and a half since the opening of the exhibition, how the plant has become a very present entity for myself and from the staff of the museum, that they are watering the plant constantly, and Arabidopsis has created this sort of affective relation, especially with the public and the people who are passing around the museum. Here you can see the camera from which the angle is being filmed. The image of the plant is transmitted to the inside of the museum, projected on a separate TV screen at the entrance to the exhibition. The real-time image renders a temporal and visual calibrating moment for the whole experience. We are very interested on the permeability of the inside and the outside of the museum, and we wanted to stress this with this particular installation. Other intervention that is composed of that composes the project Arabidopsis Thaliana is the work Sun Power, which is installed on the ground floor of the museum. It's next to the counter of the museum, and it's on top of the audiovisual installation, which is downstairs. The Sun Power sculpture, inspired by solar panel patterns, hints at the technological present marked by extractive infrastructure of gold production, simultaneously binding the exhibition with imaginary of pre-Columbian golden artifacts. This sculptures creates a dialogue with other exhibitions that are present in the museum, with El Regreso a la Maloca, or The Return to the Maloca from Miguel Ángel Rojas, and Rosario Lopez project that are distributed in the upper floors of the museum. It's another shot of the image of the work.
Yeah, this interconnectivity of the work and the objects inside our exhibition, and the fact of being in space is important to us. And we had this question: how will we enter this space? How will we exist with our ideas in this space? So this interconnectivity is not accidental, or like attempt of interconnectivity, which we hope works. So invented and fact-based narratives speak a central question of the exhibition: what is life, and what does it mean to be alive? The question, is it alive, leads the way into the installation in the shape of a Morse code ornament on the walls, framing the discussion of the implications of terrestrial life spreading into outer space. The exhibition space architecture was inspired by the shape of the human vestibular apparatus, the main gravity sensing organ located in inner ear. Sound is a core element in this project. We will invite the sound designer Andrés Silva Díaz to share some thoughts about his input and the collaboration itself, as well as the museographer of MAMBO, David Rojas, will explain this slide a bit more in the end of our presentation, so I will not linger longer reading it. Well, the audiovisual narrative of the installation draws from explicit radio, TV, and digital archival materials coming from diverse development phases of media technologies. What is like this? There's this important moment for us, the late 70s. So in the late 70s, a group of Lithuanian scientists, at that time under Soviet Union rule, started experiments with plants' ability to grow in zero gravity condition. In 1982, they succeeded to grow a full cycle of Arabidopsis Thaliana in outer space. This became an inaugural moment for the entirely new area of scientific exploration, and currently it's often referred to as astrobotany. While inscribing outer space into human historical and economic thinking, it's not new. With the Arabidopsis Thaliana exhibition, we are inviting visitors to imagine a possible paradigmatic alternative that could be caused by growing plants in space.
Unfortunately, currently, astrobotany is exclusively subject to dominant destructive discourses and practices. For us, revisiting this moment in history means overcoming the legacies of Cold War knowledge production apparatus. Based on alternative historical discourses, Arabidopsis Thaliana weaves potential for a future outside market economy determinism. In this slide, you can see the apparatus fit on 3 was the apparatus designed by the Lithuanian scientists that allowed to grow the Arabidopsis Thaliana on board of the spacecraft Salyut 7 in 1982. So basically, like the turning point of this experiment is that they took this is a very small seed of Arabidopsis. They're almost like a peckle of dust, and they were able to make it grow in space until the stage of Arabidopsis was able to produce another seed. And this is what scientists call like a full life cycle, where from seed to seed, and that's one of the core elements of the project. And apart from the inauguration of astrobotany in the early 80s, is also marked by the international negotiations of nuclear disarmament. Gabriel Garcia Marquez won the Nobel Prize in Literature that he gave his famous speech, The Solitude of Latin America, in Oslo. And the Soviet Union team, composed of Lithuanian, Ukrainian, Russian, Latvian, Estonian, and Georgian players, winning the World Basketball Championship in Cali, Colombia. The championship was broadcasted worldwide by a newly established and rapidly spreading satellite technology. So the audiovisual installation is composed by a diverse array of archival material that we worked from online material from national archives here in Colombia. We had a collaboration with the main national archive, film and radio institution, and some Lithuanian archives, especially the ones that are related to the experiment of the Lithuanian scientists in the 82. So while audiovisually navigating these narratives and media threshold, we tell this micro-historic tale of the long-list plant in an expanded and controlled ecosystem.
Drawing inspiration from Denise Ferreira Silva's methodological proposition of fractal thinking, or like raw materialism position, we creatively reinterpret extraterrestrial conditions. Following Robin Wall Kimmerer's wisdom, we believe that it is time to revive the concept of ecological economics. And our collaboration is an invitation to bring these notions into outer space with the body of the Arabidopsis Thaliana plant. Working on Arabidopsis Thaliana through these pandemic months with real and imaginary conversations with friends, colleagues, and each other, such thinkers as Octavia Butler, Lynn Margulis, Adrienne Marie Brown, Luis Carlos Barragan, and many others were true inspirations. We're especially grateful to Colombian writer Luis Carlos Barragan, who was open to our project and allowed us to use a fragment of his novel Gusano in our audiovisual work. Here we would like to return to the question of centrality of space and sound for this project, and we invite Andrés Silva and David Rojas to speak to these questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ilona, and hi everybody. I'm David. I work at Mambo as exhibition designer, and I was working alongside Santiago and Ilona in the arrangement and the distribution of the audiovisual installation and also the sculptural artworks that made up the Arabidopsis Thaliana artistic project. And from the beginning, it was very interesting that Santiago and Ilona wanted to expand or decentralize the video installation from the gallery room, and I find like some parallels with the achievement of growing this plant in outer space outside the Earth's atmosphere, by having, like, for example, the antenna with the Arabidopsis growing outside. It's sort of like also expanding the horizons of the exhibition room. So it was like a parallel theme or topic that was very present and very important for Santiago and Ilona to have like that expansion of the exhibition outside the main room. And as Ilona was explaining, this layout, this main shape, is inspired by the organ that is sensitive to gravity. And the idea was also to create a space that was very isolated, as Santiago was saying, like the loneliness in space, to create a space that was isolated from the headquarters or the familiar space of the museum. That is a place that has many like sharp edges and angles, and to contrast that architecture, we wanted to create something more organic in the space. So that's why we use the strategy to round all the corners of the gallery to create a more continuous surface for the projection, and a surface that would be the support for the narrative that is built around the archival footage. And also by having this darker space, we would be isolating the space from the rest of the galleries. That would be also helpful for isolating also the sound, because the installation and the exhibition has a very important sound component in the composition. So it was very important to have the hallway that you see in the top part of the room is sort of like a portal or an entryway that is sort of like a transition from the outer space of the museum and the rest of the galleries and the vestibule, and immerses you in a new space with a different narrative, with round corners, that gives you like a sort of like a space capsule or a space like hub, where there's this narrative displaying in all the surfaces. So that isolation was also very important for the sound design that was worked by Andrés.
Andrés.
Hello people, thank you for having me. And the sound of Arabidopsis, it's a musical composition as I see it. So music tries to give order to chaos, noise, and by that means it creates aesthetics that resonates to power structures of societies. So the sound supports the piece in its narratives, especially the one on colonization, and it uses elements of futurism and nostalgia to reinforce power structures, conflicts of power and control, accidents, and the fact that us humans listen to our memory. And this being a site-specific installation, it led us the way to play with the disposal of the sound, and this plays with the dichotomy between a technological transparency and a hypermediation. So what we did was install a 5.1 surround system that is very much used in the cinema industry to try to create a natural environment, so sound as natural as possible. But then what we did was to violently interrupt these natural landscapes with glitches and noise, creating an awareness of the mistakes, of the accidental, of the unintended, the unforeseen, and saying that these events are perhaps more determinant in society's process and human evolution as what the intention of these societies are. And this is very much the case of Colombia. So just through natural sounds from the Amazon and rural Colombia, the composition becomes sort of an impossible Macondian science fiction, which presents a fable of a colonized culture and its future. That is basically what it is.
Thank you. Andres and David for the conceptual and technical aspects of the space and sound, because I think that this project, because of its scale, was always conceived as a network of collaborations. So at this point, I think that we hope that we were able to give an overview of the space of the narrative, and I think that we are happy to open to questions and to expand this conversation.
In case there are questions or observations, we are really welcoming those. While you are thinking about it, I can imagine that, like, if you have seen it, it might be easy to ask questions. There might be some people who haven't seen it, and we are trying to recreate this impression on Zoom, which is, well, let's see how that works.
Yeah, the interesting thing that Ilona hasn't seen the installation at the museum, so like we're both on we have the two shores. I that I have been like on the installation process and physically immersed, and Ilona that has been completely intellectually immersed, but hasn't had that physical experience. But for us, I think that the project has enough angles and layers that you can enter without necessarily being in the museum. So yeah, we are happy to see questions, comments.
I guess there's something to be said about this collaboration, pandemic collaboration, when borders are shut, and when while you're addressing exactly the question of landscape and pandemic, and this has been really very productive year, and has been interesting. Obviously, we can talk forever, so please maybe give a signal if you have a question. I just wanted to share one observation that I think is important for us in this work. Like, we were hoping to also break this tension between the very contained, isolated environment and the connectivity as a goal, as something to think for. So yeah, maybe hopefully that somehow resonated with you through especially speaking when Andres and David were speaking about the space. We are really in case there are questions, to answer those. Well, anyway, I'll fill in the space because Zoom gives this impression of like somebody has to always speak. David, do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting, or if we could talk a little bit about like the chapters of the narrative, because I think these chapters that are constructed from the archival footage, like propose different reflections about, for example, economy, like the economy, but in a bigger scale, in a universal or galactical scale. There are others that talk about like the culture and how culture has an impact on science. It's like something I have read about space exploration is that in some ways it began from literature, from science fiction, from the arts, from observation, from like religious representation, and how it began feeding this narrative or this quest or this goal to go to outer space. No, so I think the exhibition has a lot of those elements that connect like culture or earthly culture in those dynamics that aim for a higher place or an outer space.
Yeah, thank you, David, for this observation. It's true. I agree that there's definitely this fascination and with the desire to go into outer space, but there's something else that is really important to us. I think like we have like several projects with Santiago, and we realize that all of them are to some extent like centering around this question of space decolonization, because we believe that there is a need to change the language around space. So all these like space exploration, space colonization is like really language which is in a way, it's surprising that we are still using it. Sorry, I'm blanking on English words, but yeah, like I'm very happy we can see it. Like one has a question, so yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to ask about the relationship between space exploration and the history, in the sense that these events, like the ones that inspire this installation, occurred almost 40 years ago, but still the space exploration project is something very very contemporary. It's going on right now. So how do you feel, my question is, how do you feel in regards to this, to how this research is kind of a historical research, but at the same time is also a contemporary issue? And how do you interpret those realities in terms of what is the meaning of your installation in the historical sense? I don't know if I made too many questions.
Thank you. That's a brilliant question. Santiago, do you want to try and answer it? You can do it as well.
Yeah, I'm going to connect a little bit with previous David intervention, and I think that the framework of the open call was landscape, and for us we were expanding on the implications of expanding this landscape beyond Earth, and expanding this sort of ecosystem, and then we start like stressing this notion of ecosystem, ecology, and economics, because in a way, like we see that the way we understand environment is mediated or determined by the notion of an extractive notion of economics, and we think that in that direction of trying to decolonize or to find new possible ways of thinking and imagining future, we had to establish that relation. So in relation to this historical and present aspect, I think that's the role of art and art institutions, which is always creating this network of connection between past events, present, and events to come. So in a way, I can mention like that exploration that's in Ilona, and our collaboration has been central, is to expand on this notion of Cold War knowledge production. That we see that the Cold War language has, and like knowledge production hasn't passed, and we see this like a particular connection between Colombia and Lithuania that are places that have been shaped by this process in a very different way, in this way, that's why the project and the narrative is always like connecting historical facts from Colombia with Lithuania and Soviet Union, and as Eugenio was mentioning, the recent Sputnik vaccine is the reintroduction of this, and there is where we see this very present need of starting to decolonize this narrative of a space exploration. From Ilona, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to add, it's great, Santiago, thank you for explaining it so nicely. I just want to add that, in a way, this focusing on this historical instance for us was also part of a search from where can we speak, from where we can start looking with different language, right? Because currently the public space is so overwhelmed by seemingly kind of transparent, like excitement, of exploration and of outer space. But then we are like it's coming from like this satisfaction with not only with language, but also with the phenomenon of the extractive approach to exploration. So in a way, it's like a little bit like I would say inspiration is also the distance, like proposition to speak from periphery to periphery. It's like trying to bypass the narratives, that are so prevalent, that they are so, like on the tip of our tongues every time we think about Cold War, or every time we try to address something, some phenomenon which happened, during the officially like so-called Cold War. There's no other way of interpreting it. So for us, it was like interesting to attempt to like find this place from where we can speak and what kind of narrative we want to propose, because there are multiple possibilities, and in that sense, like for me, it's a big inspiration of Yola's life's work, where she is inviting to unlearn certain, her invitations to unlearn imperialism. For me, it's like I paraphrase it and say it's like, let's unlearn Cold War, let's find a way to speak about it in such way that it's not harmful for us today. So we don't need to live in this bubble of the legacies of Cold War.
Natalia.
Yeah, Natalia, you had a question.
Yeah. Well, I went to the museum, and it is really amazing the amount of sensations and sensorial stimulations that you have during the exhibition. And I was wondering about what did you learn in the process, because I felt that the work as an exploration also of possibilities of interactions of human and non-human, so exploring the relationships between human and non-humans. So we have this plant that encourages some thoughts about life and resilience, and also you have this meteorite, which we relate to this outer space also in an economical way, and this mining the space is how we relate with those rocks. And then we have this virus that we don't know if it's a living form or not, and then we relate with it with a vaccine. So it's like I am wondering, what have you learned about these ways of building relationships with non-human beings?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ilona.
I think we learned a lot actually through this process. One of the major lessons were that we all have skills, and we can apply them a certain way, and we can imagine the world, but then we have to always check how it actually gets implemented. So I think this brings me a little bit back into previous question about like the collaboration that we had with Santiago. It's also like just like this way of trying to install an exhibition while there's hope that there will be possibility to travel and there's no possibility to travel, and then there's this like affectionate relation that you have to this plant, but you are thousands of miles away, and you're like, okay, so how is that plant growing there in this space? And yeah, I guess probably Santiago has even more to say about actually being in space and
I think that the first thing that we started doing once we knew that we were going to produce this project was trying to grow an Arabidopsis, and that process of planting the Arabidopsis has taught us a lot of how to structure the project. So like when Arabidopsis, you need to find the seeds, you need to find the proper soil, you have to understand that you need the soil has to have the nutrients for the plant to grow. There are loads of bacteria growing inside the soil that are feeding the plant, and I think that in that relation, it is impossible that you're never relating to an individual plant. You're relating to the whole ecosystem, and we were working with Arabidopsis as an species, but also Arabidopsis as a single plant that we have to take care of it. And in that sense, in a more theoretical framework, for us was very important to make it very present, this notion of Lim Margulis of symbiogenetics, in contraposition to Darwin's notion of evolution, which is the survival of the fittest. And when we see like all these billionaires like going into the space, they're portraying themselves as we're the fittest because we're the person who have the money, and we're the ones who are leading the evolution. And that's why we wanted to create another image of space exploration, which are not the rockets, which are not the billionaires, these no billionaires, is the plant. And what Lim Margulis says is that it's not about the survival of the fittest, it's the collaboration between species, and in a symbiotic levels, but also in a symbiogenetic level. That means that what makes life possible is the interaction between species, but also the mixing between different organisms, and that's why for us the novel from Luis Carlos Barragán, that if he's here and he's willing to talk a little bit more about his approach to this notion of mixing between organisms, human, non-human, and that we're constantly mixing not only in symbiotic, but also symbiogenetic, mixing our genetic material into that. So I don't know, Luis Carlos, if you want to say something, and yeah, it's also a good opportunity to thank for this amazing book of El Gusano with Andrés. We are big fans of your novels.
Hey all, I was not expecting to say anything. I just came to listen and to see the project and to see what you were going to say. So I really didn't prepare anything or anything related. But yeah, my work is completely related to intermixing of species and also intermixing of humans to create a greater, like an evolved being. So I guess that's the reason you contacted me and related the book to your project. Actually, when you told me about Lynn Margulies, I was very excited, and I kept on working on those ideas. I recently published a book about parasites and mutualism and things like that. I guess I'm very excited about your ideas of evolution and this idea of the humans evolving and going to space, and like the idea of all of us evolving together. I just find it fascinating. The idea that like Darwin is wrong in his conception of evolution, and that if we really want to evolve, we have to do it together. I just like that a lot. I haven't gone to the exhibition yet. I still have to do that and see how those ideas connect. But thanks a lot for your comments on the book. I hope they keep evolving somehow.
Thank you. Yes, we're big fans, and yeah, we invite, if you haven't read El Gusano, it's amazing. I haven't read the new book, but soon I will. And I think that was also like part of the learning process, is that this sort of ambitious project requires the dialogue, conversation with other forms of knowledge production, cinema, literature, music, and so on.
Yeah, I would just like to add that it was very interesting that just the fact, because this installation invites to think about the future, and this is basically an exercise. But the moment that you think about the future, that is a reflection of yourself, because we haven't lived in the future, we're right in the present. So even if societies have purpose for the future, then they are directly speaking about their past. So this is basically the exercise of trying to think about, it is a fable that we can, or I'm asking the question, is it a fable that Colombia can speak about a space program? And there are programs, space programs in other parts of the world which are bringing this fable further. For example, how are we going to colonize the world and the space orbit? And what we're seeing today with these billionaires going to space, it is precisely that. It is bringing, it's almost like a feudal scheme of seeing towards the colonization of space. And this has happened again and again and again in history. So it's very nice. It's a very nice exercise.
Yeah, well, going with the same idea that was talking Andrés and Santiago, I find it very interesting, like that idea of the future, because at that moment in 1982, when the Arabidopsis was being grown in space, was like a hope for the future, no? So this idea that this achievement, that this plant would be growing in early conditions, would also be like a hope for us to propose living outside Earth. And that mixes with the idea of the symbiosis that Santiago was talking about, because I think like that being able to grow that organism is like a first step in transforming other landscapes, or the landscapes of other planets, like through this idea of terraforming, like intervening in those other spaces to create a more viable ecosystem that is more familiar with the one we are related to in Earth. So I find it very interesting, like how the scale of this achievement or of this goal starts with like something very small, like a seed or this plant, but is aiming to something bigger, and to this idea of colonizing or inhabiting other planets. Talking about what Andres was saying, like seeing that future, but understanding the past, like the previous experience of humankind in inhabiting other spaces or expanding their borders or continental borders is grounded in colonization. So maybe this is an opportunity to approach that journey or that expansion in different terms, different from the previous experiences.
Yeah, thank you, David. Andres. That makes me really think back to the instances of looking at where astrobotany is now, and if you followed a bit, you might notice that that the conversation is very anthropocentric, right? It's very we need food, so we need plants and space. We need certain amount of nutrients, and currently the conversation is shifting towards there's solitude as well, and actually plants can help us to cope with solitude. So astronauts might turn to some plants in order to to feel less lonely and feel more connected to Earth. So the connection to Earth is also something which is being discussed. So at the same time, there's this it's nice, this focus on a plant, this shifting focus on a plant as not necessarily as something that I need to eat, but something that I might take care of at the same time while this plant has to take care of me. But somehow there's something, wrong in this relation where it doesn't come, it's like everything now, what we have, in relation to space exploration has to enter the science language first, and the science has to approve. And so what happens to the connection and the expectation of a plant to perform this function, right, of taking care of our psychology and other issues, at the same time is somehow, very, very functional, right? So I'm just thinking in a way what are other ways can we actually start over, or cut, maybe that the part where we are, making this leap into space together with plants, maybe that's the opportunity for us to think not about necessarily hyper-contained ecosystem, but think ecologically, think about relationality, and maybe that can somehow produce different approaches. And then at the same time, the idea that there are no inhabitants there, that it's a void place. This is how previous colonizations have been structured, right? So we don't know. Maybe we just blind to it. And we do have law. We have this entire area of law, mental law, that is coping with what do we do when we encounter with this, what should humanity do and how we should behave once we encounter extraterrestrial species. So that's all points, I think, to the questions of ethics, and I think the ethics is somehow getting lost through the process of this scientific exploratory colonial apparatus. So, yeah. Do we still have time? Maybe somebody has other comments and observations.
I have.
Yes, on my.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for such an interesting conversation. I have not seen the installation yet. Hopefully I'll be able to do in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited, especially after listening to all of you. I had a question after just taking on what Ilona was just talking about, the Anthropocene focus of the language, and also the ideas and the possibilities of relationality. Do you think that after working on this subject, will this, because there's so many layers here, so much content, are you guys thinking on evolving this project and working on deeper or specific other elements, or more than elements, aspects of the installation? Because I think there's so much to talk about here. I was privately talking with Santiago. He invited me this because I am a little critical of what's happening right now with the billionaires going to space while we're burning our planet. So are you guys thinking on like evolving this project? Do you have because I'm sure this has informed you greatly in your like personal practices, like do you have any more plans basically for the future, and what aspects or what layers are you interested in exploring? I'm just very curious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayra. Ilona, do you want, or should I go?
You can start. I can add later.
Well, I think that this project has informed and affect us in different ways, and we're collaborators. We have our own practice, and slowly, like, we're creating a common practice that we're understanding the limits of that collaboration. In my personal practice, this project has give a lot of transformation and like a symbiotic relation with many different ideas, and it's expanding. And I think that in this common project, we're really like working on a very specific point, which is how we can merge this installation towards an entity that can work on a single channel project, and I think that that is our aim, and we are like working into produce future or mid-length Arabidopsis project, and that's our goal. And yesterday when we were talking with Andrés, Andrés was like identifying that how this project is part of a broader project, and that is based on this level. So Ilona or Andrés?
Yeah, so since Andrés lost his spot because he's muted, I'll just I don't know, I would say just, thank you so much for the question. We are definitely trying to produce a film, so that's something that on a very practical level, these are the next steps, like single channel work. But at the same time, definitely this has been such a learning experience. I think for everybody involved, and at least like for us with Santiago, there were so many exchanges, and there are definitely a lot can be done. There are many topics. Sometimes it seems like a Sisyphean task to change the language of space colonization, and by changing the language, to hope that it can change also the practice. But I think there's a hope that there will be amplification of voices that will, put questions of ethics and not necessarily in the Western terms at its core. So we definitely have like many projects in mind, and together and separately. So it seems like a productive space. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Eugenio, for leading us through this.
Just to add on just a tiny detail, and it's that the project started a bit dynamic in that sense. When we started discussing about the project probably a year and a half ago or a year ago, we were talking about finding the different platforms and how to articulate these platforms, and we were exploring the process of the possibilities of finding funds in film and how to articulate producers to see if we can find a co-production either here, either in Colombia or in Lithuania, and finding the better mechanisms to create this project. And it ended up being a site-specific project, but I think I would be very much interested in exploring probably formats like essay documentaries or sort of film. I think Santi had a film about the moon that I've seen that it's a bit like an essay documentary of imaginary narratives and things that has like historical facts. So I think this is an interesting format to think about it.
Yeah, thank you, Andrés. Queen and Daniel.
Yes, this is all very amazing. Thank you. I was thinking I was very interested in this conversation that emerged, I think, between Andrés and David when they were discussing how the space is created, and this is very difficult for me to imagine without having seen anything. So just from the presentation you give, but there's this interesting, I think, dynamic where in the space, the construction of the space, David was emphasizing how you want to make this very controlled environment that is very much like a space capsule, and it's autonomous and it's insulated and all of these things. And I think the metaphorical range of that is very broad. I think it signals, you didn't say this, maybe you want to move away from this, but I suppose it echoes some of these ideas about the Soviet regime as this kind of totalitarian Iron Curtain enclosement in itself and all of that. I don't know if that is intended or not, but I suppose it's there a little. And then I was very interested in how Andrés suggests that sound is a way of breaking that perception totality of enclosement. How the attempt of the, let's call it the soundtrack or the sound component, was to dismantle this image of an enclosement. And I wanted to know how all of those components, if that's of the collaboration, if that's something that emerged, if it's a tension that is more or less intended, or that is a result, and how this works. It seems to be one of these interesting cases of collaborative thinking, where it starts doing things in various directions at the same time.
Thank you, Daniel.
David, would you like to start, or should I go?
No, you go. Yeah.
Well, I just like to explore on the fact that this is very much a technological installation, and I think that every technology carries on its own mistakes, things that are not intended for. So we'll see what would happen when we, I don't know, with whatever technology that would help us colonize the space in whatever means, either informatic. It always carries with its own mistakes, the internet, the vaccines. So we try to control things of the future, but nature is violent. So it crushes us with so many other possibilities, and this, in a sense, interrupts the processes of societies to become their ideals. So whatever an ideal a society might have in the future will eventually be struck by natural events that will, along their own natural dynamics, that either fulfill or interrupt these processes. And basically, that is a reflection I try to do with the music and the sound.
Yeah, and about like the arranging of the space, I think it was like a very constant conversation with Santiago and Ilona about the concept of the project, the idea of as you said, Daniel, an isolated space that would disorient the public about where they really are in the museum. So in the beginning, as Andres was saying, was like decisions that were made mainly from technical points of view, merging with the aesthetics. But I think that being like constantly talking about the idea and the concept of the project, it sort of was organic. Maybe those interpretations of the space that you're talking to us right now, I see them now. Maybe at that moment when we were arranging the space, they were not so conscious, but probably being in touch with Santiago and Ilona sort of made that happen, and that result being what it is today.
Ilona, you want me to go?
Yeah, so I am very grateful and impressed by all the technical aspects that I couldn't have been much of assistance through the process of installation, and I was like extremely humbled by the amount of work that went into producing this work from the side of MAMBO also, and from like everybody who's part of the project. It's like I just have this comment on how sound and space was at the core of our thinking, because when we started, like, okay, we are doing this now, it's landscape, it's this, and one of the first meetings with Santiago, we were like, okay, what is it gonna be? And we just like, I remember closing eyes and okay, it has to be the sound of forest, and then it had to be like what kind of forest, and then it went into certain kind of scripting and certain other imaginations, like other imaginaries, but at the same time there was always this somehow a tension in anything what we were doing. There's this abundance of ideas, and there was, but once you think about it, they fall into these clusters of like interconnectivity and isolation, and there's this critique and a constant like where are the limits of the self, where are the limits of a plant, and this comment on actually like David's comment Danielle's comment on isolation of the space as maybe drawing more on the Cold War experience of like our important experience of being behind it. I would say that yes, and at the same time it was also something where like actually the astronauts, once they go into the space, they don't see the borders. So the fact of like there are these stories of the astronauts being trapped in airspace when the Berlin Wall is falling, and they land and completely change the geopolitical environment, and yeah, they are available. So in a way, for us, it was probably a little bit more important, this like personal experience, just by passing the borders and putting emphasis on individual, and that like the sound had to somehow work with this experience. This is why we really seeked this kind of immersive experience in space.
And as way of continue with the trigger of Daniel's comment and question, I think is how I see it's like this idea of like creating a space within a space, is like we have the city, there is the museum, which has like this, it's also hyper controlled, there is security, there is control, and we created this within, but at the same time it's like we could control all those decisions, and there is something that is very present that we cannot control, and is the plant that is growing outside of the museum at the entrance. That is at the end for me, and I think that for Ilona, when we were constructing the main character, and was the importance of having the Arabidopsis growing and being outside of the museum as this element, or like this entity which is articulating the project, but at the same time it has its own time that we're not able to fully understand, not only in scientific terms, but is there. So that's why the name Arabidopsis Thaliana, and the importance of taking care of that plant in the museum in connection to that. But I think that the project as a multi-layer project is full of like contradictions and tensions with it, that definitely there are the fuel, or like the synergy that we want to keep expanding in future collaborations, film, or other exhibitions that can be consequence of this. So yeah, I don't know if someone has anything, question, another comment. Yeah, we're happy, but also we have limited time as everyone. So
yeah, if I can just add that this, hopefully this doesn't sound too didactic, because it's also like it's just an invitation. It's like the whole thinking process, and images and sound, and together with these amazing people, it's like it's an invitation to look for the language. It's not like we know all the answers, but it's a little bit like, let's not rush to think that we do have answers. It's already something. So yeah, that's final, I think, comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ilona. Thank you, Santiago. There are still 2 weeks in order to experience the project at Mambo. We are extremely happy to present it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening in Italy, this morning in Colombia. And till soon.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.